'69 was horrific because of the burnings out, because of the turmoil that took place in the ghettos. It committed everyone to either defence or attack, but it committed people to be counted.
The realisation that the nationalist people were under attack, there was nobody to defend them. I was a member of the nationalist community at that time. Okay, I was only 15 and a half, but I knew what I had to do, and I did it. And I joined the struggle from then on.
When '69 occurred, my father, who had never, and I think this is a conscious decision on his part, never talked about the IRA or talked about armed resistance or glorified in past IRA campaigns, started to equate developments and started to talk freely for the first time about comparisons between what we were going through and rioting that had taken place in the 30s and in the 20s.
I'll never forget the first time I seen somebody walking down the street with a rifle, and this was in Comber Street, and taking up position to return fire. And these were just ordinary blokes that lived in the area, and they were taking up arms to defend it.
To avert civil war in the province and the possibility of a pogrom against Catholics in Belfast, the British government had been forced to send in the British Army. With the army now on the streets, the British government would have to concern itself more directly with the politics of Northern Ireland. But interest and intervention had come too late. Events now had a relentless logic of their own. In the ghettos of scarred and gutted streets that the army now patrolled, the IRA had begun to reorganize. The prospect of armed republicans produced an inevitable reaction amongst militant Protestants.
You felt the whole tension, all over the whole of Ulster, where you lived and all, you know what I mean? There was a very thing atmosphere, cold atmosphere and everything. And then you start to realise, well, something's happened here now, like, because they're not just throwing stones and all now, they're using guns.
I know it's hard for a Protestant to say, but I think it was really the Protestants that brought forward the upsurge of the Provos at that time by the actions it took. I don't disagree with the actions because it was the only thing we could do in those days. There was nothing else we could do. We could either just sit back and let the civil rights trample us down, and I, for one, was never willing to do that.
I felt that what I'd been brought up to believe and was being taken away from me, what my parents had worked hard for to build up a home and a decent family, was all suddenly going to be taken off them. And it took them 30 years to build our home and family up, and somebody was just going to come in and take it off them. Well, I said to myself, this isn't on.
We knew something like this was going to happen, not to the scale it did happen, but it was going to come out, and we expected it. But it hardened the case in my part to really then fight fire with fire. And the only way then to get rid of civil rights, the IRA, the lot, was to wipe them off the face of the earth. And this was the basic attitude of mine and I had to start.
Protestants from Spring Martin Estate formed up 300 yards away across waste ground behind Union Jacks. The tension increased. Troops were moved up further along the road towards the Catholic crowd. A man who tried to make a lone dash towards the Protestants was hauled back by friends.
The present phase of the Troubles, the longest in Ireland's history, had begun.
After an earlier confrontation down the end, which looked at the time like a kind of civil rights clash we knew from years ago.
A few minutes later, the first exploded.
The army have said throughout the day that they hope to use minimum force, but 3 hours after the procession began, this has ended up. Dust comes onto the bogside. It's the worst ever confrontation. 3 hours. The army, Craighan and bogside.
Twice before, the army has successfully defused bombs, but today the terrorists managed to hit a primary target.
First among the causes, the Commission puts the growing sense of injustice and freedom of Catholics over inadequate housing and the occasional rallies by some local authorities.
resentment at the continuance of the Special Powers Act and the existence of the police specials as a partisan force remain excluded.
Next time on The Troubles.
The Bogside, Derry, August 1969. Tear gas is used for the first time in the United Kingdom as law and order collapses in Northern Ireland. Catholics in a minority of 1 to 2 in the province had finally rebelled against a Protestant state that had exploited and neglected them. Londonderry, second city of Northern Ireland. Two generations of teenagers have confronted the army during the years of the current troubles. Scenes of stone-throwing youths are familiar enough in Derry to attract only mild interest from bystanders. In the early 70s, confrontations like these were regular enough to become known as the Saturday matinee. This riot in the Catholic area, known as the Bogside, followed the Protestant Apprentice Boys' March in August 1980 and was unremarkable enough to go unreported. The Apprentice Boys' March is usually followed by a Catholic riot. In 1969, it lasted 3 days and is remembered as the Battle of the Bogside. It was the climax of the Troubles that year and led directly to the intervention of the British government and army. The Bogside, Derry, August 1969. Tear gas is used for the first time in the United Kingdom as law and order collapses in Northern Ireland. Catholics in a minority of 1 to 2 in the province had finally rebelled against a Protestant state that had exploited and neglected them. For 3 days and nights, Catholics in the Bogside kept the Protestant police at bay. On the third night, rioting spread across the province, bringing it to the precipice of civil war. In the ghettos of Belfast, the position of the Catholics was particularly serious. Under attack by Protestants, Catholic streets were burnt virtually to the ground, and it seemed possible that there might be a pogrom. 8 people died that night, and hundreds were injured as the police lost control. The morning saw Catholics fleeing the sectarian divide, and after the rioting had subsided, 1,500 Catholics and 300 Protestants had lost their homes. Peace had been restored by the presence of the British Army. It was only the day before that the